Waking up with a massive headache, a confused guy finds himself surrounded by a noisy crowd. His vision slowly clears as he tries to make sense of the chaotic chatter around him, revealing a massive futuristic white hall packed with hundreds of equally clueless strangers. Shock washes over him as he realizes he has absolutely no idea where he is, prompting him to wonder if this is some elaborate kidnapping or just a hyper-realistic dream. But a sudden, sharp pain spikes through his skull before he can think any further, triggering a sudden memory about a mysterious letter he received right before blacking out. Turns out, our boy Shaolin is just a regular college graduate trying to make a living, specifically by working as a high-tier power leveler to pay the bills while job hunting, and his legendary gaming skills had just secured him yet another flawless victory. Celebrating another job well done, Shaolin stretches back in his messy, cluttered room before collapsing onto his bed to scroll through social media while munching on snacks, only to find his feed flooded with videos of people getting brutally beaten up, reminding him of his father's constant insults that drove him to move out in the first place. But a sudden knock at the door abruptly cuts his depressing trip down memory lane short, revealing a mysterious delivery man holding a strange black envelope addressed directly to him, which he eagerly tears open, completely unaware of the dark energy swirling inside. Suddenly, the shadowy magic bursts out and wraps around his body like living chains, activating a forced teleportation sequence to drag him into some place called Dawn Academy, leaving nothing but an empty envelope on the floor as he vanishes into thin air. Xiaolin rubs his temples, trying to process if this magical kidnapping is just a massive prank, but a smug voice suddenly cuts through his thoughts, asking if he is finally awake, revealing a stern, uniformed instructor towering over him and mocking his 3-hour nap. Nearby, a group of panicked students starts screaming about kidnapping and calling the cops, which only earns them a highly annoyed click of the tongue from their new captor, who instantly draws his blade, unleashing a massive wave of purple energy, slicing the ceiling to pieces and instantly silencing the terrified crowd with pure destructive force. He demands absolute silence, glaring at the freshman while resting his massive sword on his shoulder, leaving Shaolin to blend into the crowd, while the angry instructor curses the admissions department, before rubbing his temples and blaming our boy for wasting everyone's precious class time. Shaolin narrows his eyes, realizing this crazy situation is far from a simple joke. This instructor introduces himself as Xinchuan, promising them wealth, power, and a ticket to a new world, and even immortality, which immediately sends the gullible crowd into a frenzy of excited shouting. Xinchuan just stares back in dead silence, completely unimpressed by their sudden burst of enthusiasm. Ordering them to grab their IDs for a potential evaluation, he makes Cheon suspect something much bigger, as the first student steps into a high-tech scanning pod that looks straight out of a video game, only for Xinchuan to instantly roast his pathetic score of 24 and kick him out. Though a beefy guy manages to score a decent 32, celebrating like he just won the lottery. But the instructor keeps complaining about the garbage-tier recruits, demanding they stop sending him such average talent. Finally, it is our boy's turn to step up, ready to see how his gaming skills translate. Sweating bullets inside the scanning pod, Shaolin notices his evaluation is taking an eternity, which immediately catches Xinchuan's attention, sparking a rare, hopeful smirk on his face, until the high-tech screen finally flashes complete after a painfully long wait, prompting the eager instructor to halt our boy, fully expecting to witness a legendary prodigy. But as his eyes lock onto the holographic display, his pupils shrink in utter disbelief, revealing a set of stats so hilariously low they look like a typo, leaving the seasoned warrior completely speechless at a grand total of just 9 points, before he facepalms in pure agony, loudly cursing the absolute trash tier of his newest recruit. While the instructor rants about this historic disappointment, Shaolin secretly wishes they would just deport him, as the disappointed veteran laments wasting his high hopes on such a massive dud. Xinchuan turns his back on our boy, declaring him to be completely and utterly useless, triggering a flood of painful memories where everyone in his life constantly called him trash. But instead of breaking him, the familiar insult only makes him grit his teeth in anger, refusing to let this new magical hellhole define his worth by the exact same label. This instructor sighs, holding up a golden ID plate while calling the upcoming entrance exam suicide, only for Shaolin to suddenly blitz forward and snatch the token right out of his hand, boldly declaring that a bunch of arbitrary numbers will never dictate what he can achieve. Amused by the kid's sheer audacity, Xinchuan smirks and challenges him to survive the test, while a curious girl in the crowd asks what exactly a gifted student is supposed to be, prompting the veteran to explain they are elite prodigies, leaving the rest to worry about surviving. This rest of the class looks on in absolute dread, realizing they might not survive this. Suddenly, a sharp-looking girl steps forward to ask about the catch behind these promises, demanding to know exactly what kind of price they will have to pay for power. Xinchuan identifies her as Gu Xiaoyu, praising her high stats while explaining the Academy's currency system, which she calmly accepts with a quiet nod, showing absolutely zero fear of the danger ahead. Shaolin watches her in awe, realizing she is already the top dog among these rookies. Meanwhile, the instructor asks everyone to mentally activate their status screens to view their attributes, prompting our boy to raise his golden token and trigger the system's holographic interface. only to freeze in horror at a warning that dying deducts 10 years of his lifespan, sending the entire room into a wild panic as they realize death here has permanent consequences. Suddenly, a sharp electronic chime rings directly inside Shaolin's head, catching him completely off guard, as a flashing system notification reveals that an abnormal fluctuation has unlocked a hidden talent, leaving our boy completely stunned that a supposed trash-tier recruit like him has a secret power. Shaking his head in absolute disbelief, he tries to process this sudden turn of events, before glancing around to realize that none of the other panicked students can hear the prompt. This system screen displays nothing but question marks, showing no database match for his mysterious talent, which apparently boosts his learning speed to maximum and lets him temporarily copy low-level abilities, giving him the exclusive right to name this unprecedented cheat code since there is no record of it. Deciding not to overthink things, Shaolin locks his gaze forward with newfound determination and proudly names his broken new ability Top Student as purple magical energy surges around him. This system confirms his newly registered talent is a mind-blowing God-tier SS rank, which is perfect because even Qinchuan's high-level scanning authority couldn't detect it, giving our boy a massive hidden advantage that nobody else in this room knows about. He realizes this secret cheat code is his ultimate trump card for surviving this magical death trap. Meanwhile, a panicked student realizes his low lifespan means a single death will instantly end him, only for Qinchuan to smack him upside the head for being an absolute idiot. Qinchuan explains that having a measurable lifespan is actually hitting the jackpot here, because in this academy, your remaining years are a literal currency you can earn and spend, leaving the poor kid scratching his head, completely baffled by this bizarre high-stakes economy, where survival means climbing a brutal ladder to claim ultimate power, wealth, and knowledge. Qinchuan points upward, explaining that hoarding enough credits can theoretically buy them literal immortality, prompting Gu Xiaoyu to adjust her glasses and ask if this rule is actually universal, which the instructor confirms, stating the magical law remains active even if they return to Earth. Cutting the chatter short, the veteran announces that their deadly entrance exam starts right now, ordering the panicked freshman to freeze in place as he raises his hand to snap, triggering a loud system announcement that the mass teleportation sequence is officially beginning. As the countdown hits 3, Gu Xiaoyu stands perfectly calm while everyone else starts sweating, while Shaolin braces himself at count 2, ready to test his broken new cheat code, until the final second strikes, engulfing the entire room in a blinding flash of purple fire, leaving Qinchuan alone to complain about his performance review since this batch has 0 prodigies. Qinchuan rubs his temples in absolute despair, cursing his terrible luck with this year's recruits. But a sudden, mocking laugh from behind instantly cuts his self-pity session short, revealing a smug, cigar-smoking instructor in camo pants walking up to rub it in, who proudly brags about his class pulling 2 high-tier recruits while asking about Qinchuan's results, slinging an arm around his annoyed colleague to gloat about his 40-plus attribute genius. Our annoyed instructor swats his hand away, snapping that double S-rank talents are basically a myth. Meanwhile, the freshmen materialize deep inside a creepy, mist-filled canyon smelling of absolute rot, prompting Shaolin to pinch his nose as the foul stench of goblins hits him, before a glowing blue system interface suddenly materializes right in front of his face, outlining a deadly survival quest to escape the forest while hunting down the Goblin King. A system notification pops up, offering a free preparatory gift pack containing 1 random weapon, followed by a highly reassuring reminder that this specific test has absolutely 0 death penalty, sending the terrified freshmen into a wild frenzy of relief as they realize their lifespans are safe. Tapping his screen, Shaolin claims his freebie and receives a bottom-tier F-rank novice magic staff, which instantly unlocks a basic wand mastery skill, materializing a wooden staff right in his hand. Our boy examines the weapon, realizing this entire magical system functions exactly like his favorite video games, sparking a confident smirk as he decides to test out his newly acquired gaming knowledge. Winding up like a pro baseball player, he channels a crackling ball of purple energy into the crystal before slamming the staff down with all his might, unleashing a violent shockwave into the rocky terrain, leaving a smoking, deeply shattered crater in the solid stone to prove his magic is no joke. Shaolin smirks as the system confirms his flashy display just earned him some easy experience points, especially since his broken double S-rank talent means he will level up twice as fast as everyone else. But a sudden, sharp ringing in his ear instantly cuts his smug celebration short. Turns out his trash tier stats mean his tiny mana bar is already completely empty after 1 single shot. Nearby, a beefy classmate happily swings a giant sword, revealing that physical weapons also grant easy experience, though our boy quickly realizes that mindless grinding will only exhaust them before the strict time limit runs out, making him decide that swapping his useless wand for a physical weapon is his best bet. At that exact moment, the class prodigy Gu Xiaoyu quietly approaches him with a surprising offer to trade gear, explaining that her high intelligence stat makes her much better suited for magic than a physical blade. She bluntly points out his obvious physical weakness, leaving our boy with no choice but to accept the deal. Our boy introduces himself with a friendly smile, hoping to establish a solid connection. She gets straight to the point, asking if he is actually down to trade weapons. He hands over his wooden staff, warning her that casting magic requires some decent aim, while the system instantly rewards him with a basic shortsword mastery skill as he grips the blade. Realizing this deadly exam is a team sport, he decides to secure a reliable partner, turning back to the class prodigy with a smooth, confident invitation to join forces. But a massive meathead suddenly interrupts, boldly asking her to team up with him instead. This muscle-bound jock brags about his double-digit physical stats, completely ignoring our annoyed protagonist, calling Xiaolin a useless pretty boy while claiming he is the far superior option, leaving Gu Xiaoyu to stare back in dead silence, completely unimpressed by his loud bragging. Gu Xiaoyu cold shoulders the meathead instantly, walking away without giving him a single second of her time. This immediate rejection triggers a wave of snickers from the crowd, making the embarrassed jock snap in anger. Whipping his head around to find a target for his rage, he fumes with absolute embarrassment, before his murderous glare lands directly on Xiaolin, who is just standing there minding his own business. Storming over to vent his frustration, the brute aggressively confronts our boy for simply looking his way. He rants about how a single-digit loser has no business acting fancy with a sword. Xiaolin calmly advises him to save his energy for the actual test instead of picking fights. But this logical advice only makes the meathead grab our boy's collar to threaten him with violence, prompting a highly amused smirk to spread across Xiaolin's face as he prepares to react, because he knows this arrogant bully is about to get a very painful reality check. Before the meathead can even lay a finger on our boy, a feral goblin leaps from above, slashing the arrogant bully across the face and leaving him screaming in sudden agony as he clutches his bleeding cheek, cursing his terrible luck for letting his guard down. Unfortunately, the green monster isn't done yet, lunging straight back in for the kill. With a desperate roar, the jock swings his massive blade, slicing the beast in half, barely surviving the sudden ambush while panting heavily over the freshly slain creature, only to immediately turn his embarrassment on Xiaolin, accusing him of enjoying the show. But his tough guy act instantly evaporates when a chilling sound echoes from the dark bushes, revealing an entire army of angry goblins stepping out to surround the terrified freshman, sending the entire group into a screaming panic as their easy exam turns into a nightmare. Screams of terror echo through the canyon as the goblins ruthlessly tear into the panicked students, leaving several rookies dead on the ground as their bodies dissolve into digital pixels, forcing Xiaolin to block a vicious claw strike, realizing this simulation feels way too real, as the putrid stench of blood and decay fills his nostrils during the chaotic struggle, while Gu Xiaoyu channels, crackling purple lightning through her newly acquired magic staff, and our boy slices off a goblin's hand, feeling the warm, sticky blood splatter his face. He realizes that despite being a virtual exam, the sheer trauma of combat is brutally authentic. Suddenly, a panicked student points toward a nearby cave, shouting for everyone to take shelter inside, prompting the surviving freshman to scramble past our boy in a desperate bid for safety. But Xiaolin suspects this convenient little safe zone might actually be a deadly trap. A glowing timer confirms the cave's safe zone status has a strict 30-minute limit, prompting Xiaolin to grip his sword tighter and force himself to stay calm, because waiting around for a timer to expire is basically a slow death sentence. So he starts swinging his blade to grind for some quick experience points, realizing his trash tier stats mean he has to make every single swing absolutely perfect. Suddenly, the timer plummets to just 2 minutes, throwing the entire cave into absolute panic, as injured students complain that the fast-moving goblins make the survival mission completely impossible, while Gu Xiaoyu sits quietly in the corner, completely unfazed by the mounting chaos, watching our boy practice his sword forms like a man possessed while everyone else despairs. Unfortunately, his terrible stamina means he is already completely out of breath before the real fight. Gu Xiaoyu bluntly tells our boy his frantic sword practice is a complete waste of time, leaving Xiaolin sweating as he silently marvels at her terrifyingly sharp analytical mind. She calculates that reaching level 2 under normal circumstances would take at least an hour, but our boy just smirks, knowing his broken double S-rank talent completely breaks those rules, especially since his shortsword mastery is already sitting at a whopping 98% completion rate. Shrugging it off, Xiaolin asks if she gathered any useful intel on their green enemies, which catches her off guard since she didn't think he noticed her watching the battlefield, prompting him to compare her careful strategy to a gamer checking a walkthrough before a boss fight. She explains that the goblins are actually weak F-rank mobs with fragile heads and hearts, meaning this deadly trial is actually quite simple if everyone would just stop crying and panic screaming, while the other terrified students huddle in the corners shivering with absolute dread. Our boy and Gu Xiaoyu prepare to step back out into the danger zone, but the angry meathead blocks their path, demanding to know where they think they are going, desperately begging the class prodigy to ditch our boy before he drags her down. She calmly explains that escaping is easy, but the real prize is hunting the Goblin King, which absolutely blows the jock's mind since they are barely surviving as it is, prompting our boy to analyze the hidden trigger mechanism behind the boss's sudden spawn, deducing that a high goblin kill count is the most logical trigger for the encounter, meaning they need to actively hunt down more monsters to force the boss to spawn. Unfortunately, a nearby archer girl begs them to just escape instead of risking their lives. Xiaolin steps forward, reminding the panicked crowd that running away from a zero penalty test is just a waste, especially since they can can score extra credits without any real risk of dying in the process. His logical pitch actually works, convincing the desperate students to gear up before their safe zone collapses. But the angry meathead immediately scoffs, loudly bragging about his supposedly elite starting stat of 32. Gu Xiaoyu deadpans that 32 is barely above average, prompting the jock to demand her own stats, only for her to push up her glasses and calmly drop a massive 46, before politely asking the stunned bully to shut his mouth and stay out of her way, leaving the arrogant jock sweating in absolute silence while the surrounding rookies stare in utter awe. Even Shaolin is blown away, realizing her starting stats are literally 5 times higher than his. Taking charge, the class prodigy rallies the survivors, declaring that cooperation is their only ticket to survival. Gu Xiaoyu assigns the meathead to tank the front lines, forcing him to grudgingly accept, while she instructs the ranged fighters to form tight squads and provide cover fire, turning her attention to Shaolin to assign him a highly specialized role, which basically means our boy gets to play cleanup by picking off low health runners. And with their roles set, the newly organized squad marches out of the cave, immediately launching into battle as the meathead aggressively cleaves through the first wave, while the archers draw their bows to rain down arrows from a safe distance, keeping the incoming horde pinned down as the green monsters screech in pain. But a sneaky goblin slips past the front line, lunging straight for the archer girl, only for Shaolin to blitz in, ready to claim his easy kill. Shaolin delivers a clean, decisive slash, instantly securing his first official goblin kill. This rescued archer girl stammers her thanks while our boy focuses on conserving his precious stamina. He waits for the perfect opening to strike again, easily securing his second kill. Another green monster falls to his blade, bringing his tally up to 3 in no time. With a swift thrust, he claims a fourth victim while keeping his movements incredibly efficient. Nearby classmates watch in disbelief, with the bitter meathead dismissing his flawless timing as mere luck. However, Gu Xiaoyu knows better, realizing our boy is actively predicting every single enemy movement. This tactical efficiency pays off instantly, as his short sword mastery officially levels up to level 2. Turns out his secret weapon is just 2 months of hardcore gaming in an immersive VR simulator. But his quiet celebration is cut short when a sudden system alert pops up before him. This system rewards his speedrun by giving him a free active skill called Heavy Slash, and with only one more kill needed to complete his first optional quest, he pumps his fist, watching as another green monster gets absolutely fried by a sudden bolt of magic, allowing our boy to easily plunge his blade down and secure his 5th and final kill, completing the quest and letting him rest the sword over his shoulder with smug satisfaction. But the battlefield suddenly goes quiet as the remaining monsters dissolve into glowing blue pixels, leaving the confused meathead to shout in frustration as a strange static noise fills the air, triggering a system-wide broadcast announcing that they have successfully wiped out a third of the population, which officially triggers the hidden boss condition and summons the massive, terrifying Goblin King. This colossal beast towers over the forest, leaving Shaolin staring up at his ultimate challenge. This massive beast unleashes a deafening roar, exhaling thick plumes of freezing steam, which unleashes a massive green shockwave that ripples violently across the entire battlefield, forcing the terrified students to cover their ears as their eardrums nearly burst, while the archer girl trembles in sheer horror at the monster's overwhelming pressure. Even our boy and Gu Xiaoyu can feel the sheer gravity of the situation, especially when a colossal health bar appears above the towering boss's head, confirming that this legendary dungeon boss is not here to play nice. At that exact moment, the remaining small fry goblins suddenly dissolve into thin air, leaving the rookies to whine about a health bar longer than their actual lifespans, before one coward completely loses his mind and runs away, ignoring Shaolin's warnings. Shaolin quickly realizes these monsters actually have a major weakness, a very narrow field of vision, but their incredibly sharp senses of smell and hearing more than make up for it, meaning that screaming coward running away is basically a giant beacon for the boss. Meanwhile, the arrogant meathead tries to rally the group, claiming they can easily overwhelm the beast, and he charges forward with a massive leap, aiming a heavy strike at the giant, only for the massive boss to easily track his trajectory with its glowing eye, delivering a brutal kick that sends the overconfident jock flying backward in an instant, crashing into the dirt with enough force to shatter the surrounding stone, leaving him coughing up blood as his weapon slips completely out of his grasp. As his defeated body begins to dissolve into digital pixels, the remaining rookies freeze in absolute horror. Seeing their strongest tank get instantly deleted, the remaining students completely lose their minds and flee. One screaming runner draws the boss's attention, realizing too late that noise is a death sentence, as a massive green foot stomps down, crushing him into the dirt with absolute ease, while the colossal Goblin King swings his heavy wooden club to sweep away the other runners, sending another helpless rookie flying through the air from the sheer force of the impact, leaving her pinned to the ground as the giant towers over her for a final blow. But a sudden blast of purple magic strikes the monster's shoulder, drawing its attention away, which barely scratches his massive health bar but gives the terrified girl a chance to escape. Gu Xiaoyu clicks her tongue in frustration, realizing her spell didn't hit where she wanted, explaining to our boy that hitting limbs is useless, meaning they must target the boss's vitals. Gu Xiaoyu realizes her original tactical plan relied on the frontliners holding the boss's attention, but with the entire team scattering in absolute panic, her perfect formation has completely crumbled, leaving her standing entirely alone as the massive shadow of the giant looms directly over her. She realizes her calculations were far too idealistic as the colossal beast raises its heavy wooden club, prompting her to scream at Shaolin to run away before he gets instantly flattened. Suddenly, our boy blitzes past her with his sword drawn, his eyes glowing with intense blue energy, which immediately catches the attention of the massive Goblin King, who turns with a furious snarl, only for Shaolin to nimbly dodge the crushing club strike, landing perfectly on the weapon itself. He crouches low, quickly deducing that the boss's attack pattern simply targets whichever player is closest. Taking charge, our boy shouts instructions to the remaining survivors to draw attention and create openings. This terrified archer girl nervously nods, raising her bow to help, despite her hand shaking violently. Shaolin quickly directs Gu Xiaoyu to use her high magic damage to chip down the boss's massive health pool, prompting both girls to immediately prepare their ranged attacks as a glowing purple spell charges up, which unleashes a barrage of magical projectiles that successfully shave off a chunk of the giant's health bar. Seeing the massive beast stumble from the impact, the archer girl celebrates their sudden tactical success, and our boy eagerly encourages them to keep up the pressure while he maintains his position. But the furious Goblin King suddenly lets out a deafening roar that echoes across the entire forest, slamming his massive fists together to channel a devastating area of effect attack that shatters the ground. This unleashes a violent shockwave of green energy, instantly tearing up the earth and sending debris flying, leaving the helpless archer girl to take a direct hit from a flying boulder as Shaolin desperately reaches out. This massive Goblin King stands tall, glaring down at the remaining duo with sheer murderous intent, leaving Shaolin and Gu Xiaoyu as the last line of defense against this absolute unit, and she nervously asks our boy if they even stand a chance at winning this fight, prompting Shaolin to smirk and ask if she has enough mana left for a few more blasts, to which she grimly replies that she can squeeze out 2 more shots at most. He tells her a single headshot will do the trick, but she worries the beast is too fast, prompting our boy to flash a confident grin and promise to freeze the giant in its tracks, instantly activating his unique scholar skill as a surge of tactical data floods his mind, which immediately analyzes the boss's shockwave ability and reveals its exact 3-second stun window, allowing him to slide his foot forward and prepare to prove his doubters dead wrong. Shaolin prepares his counterattack, activating his newly copied shockwave skill as dark energy swirls around him. With his eyes glowing and his grip tightening on his sword, he locks onto his target, and right on cue, the massive Goblin King raises his fist to unleash another devastating shockwave. But our boy realizes his weapon-based version has a much faster wind-up time than the giant's, allowing him to instantly trigger the copied skill just as his eye flashes with absolute focus, crashing his blade directly into the monster's massive fist in a blinding flash of light, proving that even a boss's ultimate skill can be completely interrupted if you hit it hard enough, which successfully cancels the giant's devastating attack and leaves the massive beast completely off balance, leaving the towering monster wide open as our boy plants his feet for the final blow. He flashes a confident smirk, knowing his risky gamble paid off exactly the way he planned. Unfortunately, our boy can't just spam his newly copied skill due to a brutal 30-second cooldown, but Gu Xiaoyu lands a clutch magical blast right on the giant's face to buy him time, which only makes the massive beast roar in pure fury as it prepares a counterattack. She desperately warns him that she only has enough mana left for one final shot, while the towering boss grabs a massive boulder to crush our boy once and for all, leaving Shaolin trapped too close to dodge the incoming projectile with his cooldown still ticking, prompting him to flash a reckless smirk as he makes a wild split-second decision, choosing to take the hit head-on by channeling his mana directly into his arm, sending Gu Xiaoyu into a total panic as the devastating impact kicks up a massive dust cloud. Yet our boy emerges from the smoke completely fine, his pixelated arm absorbing the entire blow. Realizing his copied shockwave won't reach from a distance, Shaolin watches the cooldown timer tick down. He boldly slides directly underneath the colossal beast's massive frame to maximize his next strike, holding his breath as he waits for the exact millisecond his skill becomes available again. This moment the cooldown hits 0, our boy slams his blade down with a furious roar, instantly triggering the copied shockwave skill to disrupt the giant's impending crushing blow, which unleashes a massive burst of purple energy that completely paralyzes the towering monster, prompting Shaolin to scream at his mage partner to deliver the final blow. Gu Xiaoyu unleashes her absolute last drop of mana, firing a devastating beam of purple magic, piercing the beast's head and completely emptying its massive health bar in a pixelated explosion, leaving our boy standing victorious atop the crumbling boss as the system confirms their legendary victory. With the colossal beast finally dead, Shaolin collapses onto the ground in absolute exhaustion, muttering about how this insane life-or-death struggle was supposedly just a basic safe zone trial, while Gu Xiaoyu stares down at his battered body, convinced they won't survive the next phase. Meanwhile, back at the academy headquarters, the instructors gather to review the freshman test results, where the smug head of admissions breaks down the underwhelming rank distribution of this year's rookies. But the room instantly erupts into murmurs when he reveals 15 students actually achieved S-rank ratings, prompting the shocked teachers to wonder if they accidentally recruited a generation of absolute prodigies. Some instructors immediately start bragging about the gifted geniuses assigned to their specific classes, as the admissions head confirms this is their highest quality rookie batch in nearly a decade, leaving one incredibly depressed teacher to lament that his class got absolutely zero gifted students. This smug admissions head quickly reassures the depressed teacher that his class actually set 2 school records, starting with a historic milestone where 2 completely non-gifted students managed to secure S-rank ratings, while simultaneously breaking the Academy's all-time record for the highest intelligence stat among freshmen. But before the teacher can celebrate, he drops the bomb about their other record, revealing that these polar opposite records both belong to the exact same pair of S-rank rookies. Meanwhile, our boy materializes back at the Academy completely healed as the teleportation sequence finishes, staring at his S-rank rewards in disbelief while wondering how he cleared the safe zone quest, until he realizes Gu Xiaoyu must have carried his unconscious body across the finish line herself. Suddenly, his train of thought is interrupted when the archer girl eagerly runs up to greet him, showering him with gratitude for helping her secure a highly coveted A-rank rating against all odds. This archer girl admits she got wiped out by the boss's area of effect attack, prompting Xiaolin to casually confirm their victory as she cheers in absolute excitement. But their celebration is instantly cut short by their incredibly bitter class teacher, who scoffs that our boy only survived by riding the talented mage's coattails. Just then, Gu Xiaoyu herself approaches the group, calling out to Xiaolin directly, and she requests a private chat to discuss the details of their recent battle, leading him away to a quiet corner of the academy to speak in private. Xiaolin sincerely thanks her for the assist, but she coldly dismisses it as mutual benefit, pointing out that his crucial skill interrupt was the only reason she landed the final blow, leaving our boy highly impressed by how logically she calculates every single battlefield variable. Gu Xiaoyu points out that his low stats make his boss interrupting stunt theoretically impossible, prompting our boy to scratch his head and offer a simple, grateful smile, before she holds up her academy nameplate to suggest adding each other as friends, instructing him to silently recite a command to summon his personal status panel. Both of them immediately activate their devices, letting the system scan their profiles, which displays Xiaolin's hilariously low base stats as he reads off his student ID, sending a digital notification directly to his screen for a pending friend request, and he quickly accepts with a single tap to finalize their new alliance. Suddenly, their loudmouthed instructor barks orders for all the F-rank failures to assemble immediately, while directing the rest of the class to navigate toward the central playground. As they head out, their bitter class teacher watches them from the shadows with a suspicious glare, suddenly calling Gu Xiaoyu over for a private chat while our boy is left standing alone, leaving Xiaolin to pull up his digital map and plan his route to the playground. Wondering if the teacher pulled her aside over their S-rank score or something far more suspicious, he arrives at the massive outdoor field, marveling at the sheer number of students gathered together, when Gu Xiaoyu suddenly catches up, assuring him she didn't leak any of his secret skills. But their conversation is cut short as loud shouts echo across the crowded field, parting the sea of rookies as a group of elite upperclassmen strides confidently through the crowd. This blue-haired leader takes his place at the podium, looking down at the freshmen with smug authority, introducing himself as the student council president to officially kick off their next brutal phase. This president explains that the principal is running late, welcoming the rookies on behalf of the academy. But a sudden deafening roar echoes from above, instantly cutting his welcoming speech short, sending the entire crowd of freshmen into a state of absolute wide-eyed panic, as a colossal, purple-scaled dragon descends from the clouds with terrifying grace, leaving Xiaolin completely speechless as he stares at the legendary beast in sheer disbelief. This massive creature unleashes a terrifying screech, its glowing purple eyes radiating pure, unadulterated power, paralyzing our boy with an overwhelming aura of fear that completely locks up his muscles, while even the usually calm Gu Xiaoyu trembles from a deep, instinctive dread. Suddenly, the massive dragon lands right beside the podium, revealing an old man riding on its back, who casually apologizes to the terrified students for his late arrival due to some minor traffic. This legendary old man standing before them is revealed to be the Dawn Academy principal, and the student council president nervously points out that this entrance ceremony is a bit too grand, prompting the old man to snap back that he didn't ride this giant lizard just to show off, explaining he rushed back from another dimension and will skin the beast if it scares the students again. While Xiaolin realizes this eccentric old man is the only person who can view his secret talent. Holding his massive staff, the principal addresses the crowd, praising the impressive talents of this year's freshmen. But his sharp blue eye suddenly darts to the side, locking onto a specific target, sending a sudden jolt of alarm straight through our boy as he feels the heavy gaze. before the principal slams his staff down to activate a massive sound amplification spell, allowing his booming voice to echo across the field as he addresses their forced recruitment. This principal casually blames the admissions department for kidnapping students in the middle of the night, promising to change the rules so future rookies don't get traumatized after dark, but his playful demeanor instantly vanishes as he addresses their two biggest burning questions, declaring to the crowd that they are all officially colonists of a brand new world, a dangerous, untamed realm known as Planet Norma that is teeming with mythical beasts, where their sole purpose at Dawn Academy is to conquer and claim territory for humanity, reminding them that their peaceful, ordinary lives ended the second they opened those letters. He paints a picture of their potential futures, where some might become legendary Legion-leading generals, while others might master the laws of magic to become all-powerful Grand Magi, or perhaps even rise to become the absolute rulers who forged the New World's laws. This principle promises them absolute power, immortality, and all the treasures of this uncharted new world. But he quickly shifts gears to announce a massive, unprecedented change to the Academy's traditional rules, declaring that the top 3 freshmen on the upcoming exam will earn early access to Planet Norma, sending the Student Council president into a panic before a single icy glare shuts him down, forcing the terrified upperclassmen to immediately backpedal and apologize for stepping out of line, as the principal casually dismisses the assembly like he didn't just threaten his student leader. While the crowd disperses, Xiaolin ponders the president's extreme reaction, but decides to focus on getting stronger, until a sudden voice cuts through his thoughts, ordering our boy to stay behind for a moment, revealing their bitter class teacher, Counselor Qin, who looks surprisingly casual as he approaches him, explaining that since the top-scoring Gu Xiaoyu refused the class monitor position, the job is now wide open. Counselor Qin explains that the monitor position comes with extra credits, resource quotas, and special privileges, calling it a literal lifeline for a deadweight like him as the system confirms his new appointment, before the lazy instructor waves goodbye and tells him to read the digital manual himself. Left standing alone in the field, Xiaolin can only repeat the word privileges with deep suspicion. Soon after, our boy heads over to the massive student dormitories to secure his new living quarters, where a bored receptionist coldly explains the strict curfew rules and the credit penalties for staying out late, but she suddenly pauses in surprise when she scans his student profile on her monitor, instantly transforming into a sparkling fangirl upon realizing this rookie is actually a class monitor, leaving our boy highly amused by how fast she changes her tune to offer him VIP treatment, as she eagerly hands over his new green uniform while explaining the Academy's strict color-coded ranking system. She leads him into a spacious single dorm reserved exclusively for class monitors, handing over his golden ID tag while warning him to never lose it, before introducing herself as Zhang Tingting and eagerly offering to be his personal guide. With a playful wave, she reminds him to choose his classes carefully before heading out, leaving Xiaolin to realize just how much weight his new monitor title actually carries. But since this academy clearly runs on raw strength, he needs to plan his curriculum. Closing his eyes, our boy commands the system to open up his course schedule, only to be instantly overwhelmed by a massive, dizzying list of mandatory and elective classes. Fortunately, he quickly calms down, remembering his overpowered prodigy talent gives him a massive learning boost, which is exactly what he needs to rapidly fix his pathetic base stats before exams start. He starts selecting his courses, prioritizing basic swordsmanship for its versatility and ease of use, before locking in a balanced mix of combat, history, and language classes to build his foundation. This very next morning, the grueling grind begins inside the Academy's basic swordsmanship training hall, where our boy repeatedly strikes a wooden dummy to slowly chip away at his experience bar. Luckily, his passive prodigy talent kicks in, instantly doubling his learning efficiency by correcting his posture. Armed with perfect form, he swings with renewed vigor as the system notifications keep stacking up, allowing him to level up his skill and boost his base strength in record time, though the same cannot be said for his exhausted classmates, who are already collapsing in agony. Suddenly, a sharp blade slams into the stone floor, silencing the room with an icy threat. Their substitute teacher, a fierce third year named Cheng Na, declares that nobody leaves until they hit level 3. This exhausted rookies can only weep in despair, cursing their choice of basic swordsmanship, since leveling up this basic skill normally takes hours of grueling, non-stop swinging. But Xiaolin casually steps forward to address the terrifying instructor directly, calmly announcing that he already hit level 3 and needs to leave for meditation class, prompting Cheng Na to narrow her eyes in absolute cold disbelief at his claim, scoffing that it is physically impossible to master the skill in under 2 hours, openly roasting him as the weakling who allegedly leached his way to an S-rank score, demanding to know if he thinks she is stupid enough to believe his lies. But our boy simply shrugs, inviting her to check his official system data panel, which only makes the fierce instructor smirk with a dangerous, deeply mocking amusement. Suddenly, Cheng Na activates her high-level teaching permissions, triggering a massive digital system warning, leaving Xiaolin completely stunned as the training room dissolves into a creepy pile of bones. She smugly declares that actual combat is far better than looking at boring digital data, welcoming our boy to the Academy's incredibly expensive all-system combat simulation arena, which uses astronomical resources to replicate the underlying laws of the dangerous planet Norma. and while she reassures him that he won't actually die in this virtual space, she warns him that every single ounce of pain will feel completely real. At that exact moment, a horde of glowing purple skeleton soldiers begins crawling from the dirt, as the fierce instructor challenges him to prove his level 3 skills in actual combat. Sitting casually on her bone throne, she notes these monsters are just as tough as goblins. She offers him a sweet deal: clear this dungeon, and he gets a permanent early dismissal pass. But the system immediately drops a brutal survival timer and a 20-kill requirement on his head, leaving our boy sweating as he realizes his crazy instructor literally summoned a high-level death trap, though he quickly draws his newly acquired iron weapon to prepare for the incoming onslaught. Since the system offers two distinct paths to victory, he has a choice to make: either playing defense to stall out the clock while dodging these massive bone-shattering swings, or taking the fight directly to the undead horde by slicing through their ranks. He chooses violence, immediately launching himself forward to shatter the nearest monster with a heavy strike, securing his very first kill as the system counter officially registers his aggressive progress, calculating that targeting their structural weak points will let him dismantle each monster in just 2 hits. Xiaolin calculates that taking down 20 skeleton soldiers means landing exactly 40 precise strikes. Watching from her bone throne, Changna is genuinely surprised the kid actually dared to charge in, expecting him to immediately beg for mercy instead of showing off surprisingly decent footwork and slashing angles, as our boy delivers another crisp, calculated strike to shatter another undead soldier's defenses, proving his battlefield judgment is incredibly sharp despite his lack of actual combat experience. Still, the fierce instructor notes that while his skills are great, his base stats are absolute trash, suddenly realizing he took both swordsmanship and meditation specifically to patch up those pathetic physical limitations. Unfortunately, pushing his weak body to the absolute limit leaves him wide open to a sudden counterattack. Though managing 13 solo kills with his garbage stats is already a certified miracle at this point, but a sneaky skeleton soldier exploits his exhaustion, slashing his back to deliver a painful reality check. Smirking from her bone throne, Cheng Na tells our boy to stop struggling and face reality. She smugly advises him to just lie down and accept defeat like a good little rookie, but Xiao Lin ignores her, suddenly unleashing a powerful heavy slash to shatter his 16th target, leaving the fierce instructor completely dumbfounded by how a freshman already unlocked that advanced skill. Riding that momentum, our boy tears through the remaining undead horde with absolute relentless precision, before driving his blade straight through the skull of the final monster to complete the challenge, gasping heavily for air as the simulated arena begins to fade back into reality. Yet he still manages a smug grin, reminding his stunned instructor that he met her ridiculous terms. Watching him collapse, Cheng Na finally admits to herself that his high exam scores weren't just luck. While over at the student council office, the president begins reviewing the files of this year's top-tier rookies. Back in the office, the president's assistant nervously hands him a highly unusual class schedule, explaining that a certain freshman has made some incredibly bizarre course selections. This student leader nearly chokes when he realizes Xiao Lin signed up for literally every single class. Meanwhile, the principal consults the academy's floating AI assistant about a strange discrepancy in student enrollment, pointing out that the central database is missing exactly one official admission letter. Since this system error is completely unprecedented, he demands answers from the main control program. But when she claims everything is correct, he orders her to pull up Xiaolin's file, only for the digital girl to playfully reveal that he lacks the clearance to view it. This shocking revelation leaves the powerful old man completely speechless with rage, unable to comprehend how the actual principal of the academy is locked out of his own system. This old principal narrows his eyes, realizing he needs to play his cards carefully. He decides to drop the matter for now, ordering the AI to encrypt all freshman files. This digital girl happily complies, flashing a knowing smile as she begins the process. Floating in the digital void, she initiates the system-wide lockdown with absolute ease, confirming that every single rookie file is locked down except for Xiao Lin's protected data, as she slyly asks if he is trying to hide our boy's true identity. This old man simply nods, revealing he is returning to the dangerous new world tomorrow, explaining that he wants to prevent anyone from interfering with Xiao Lin's rapid growth, leaving the entire academy's safety in the hands of his cheerful digital assistant. This very next morning, a massive buffet spread awaits the hungry students in the cafeteria. Sitting across from him, Zhang Tingting gasps in shock as she recognizes his notorious reputation, leaving Xiao Lin sweating over his lunch as he realizes gossip travels faster than light speed, while she sighs over his terrible luck of running into the terrifying substitute instructor Cheng Na. Changing the subject, our boy asks if only teachers can access the holographic simulation arena, prompting her to look at him like he has two heads for ignoring his own privileges, explaining that a class monitor actually holds the power to approve simulation requests for their classmates, and they can even bypass the bureaucracy to submit their own personal training applications directly, prompting him to tap his digital screen to locate the hidden application option, though she warns him that a mere freshman's request will almost certainly face instant rejection, only to spit her drink out in absolute shock when his screen immediately flashes approved. Zhang Tingting stares in absolute disbelief, complaining that normal monitors wait weeks for this kind of approval. She warns him that failing the simulation means losing 500 precious redemption points forever, leaving our boy with zero room for error since he only has 800 points points left. But securing a top 3 exam spot is his only ticket to entering the new world early, and he knows his rivals are already plotting to snatch his monitor title away. This angry challenger is practically foaming at the mouth, desperate to see him fail. So Shaolin resolves to grind his stats before his enemies can lock him out. He bids his senior farewell, stepping out of the cafeteria to head straight to his next class. Watching him leave, she can't help but admire his relentless drive to stay ahead of everyone. Soon he arrives at the physical education classroom, ready to push his body to its absolute limits. A snobby freshman named Liang Ziyu rants about how a total weakling became class monitor, while his buff friend Dallin fumes over the counselor's allegedly garbage taste in rookies, calling Shaolin a pathetic poser for staying late to do extra solo training. Suddenly, the glasses-wearing snob suggests they don't even need to wait for the official assessment, plotting to use a corrupt sophomore connection in the disciplinary department to ruin our boy. Unaware of the incoming drama, Shaolin is busy sweating bullets on a gym treadmill, slowly grinding his physical fitness level up to patch his terrible base stats, checking his watch as the clock ticks closer to 7 in the evening. He reckons a quick jog will get him back to his dorm right before curfew, but as he reaches out to open the door, a sudden click ruins his plans. Shaolin freezes in absolute confusion as a strange noise echoes through the empty hallway, realizing with a sinking feeling that someone has actually deadbolted the gym door from the outside. But before he can panic, he finds himself standing outside facing a mysterious robed man holding a black chicken. Sweating under the stranger's intense gaze, our boy politely asks who he is dealing with. Turns out this eccentric guy is Song Junlang, the highly influential head of the logistic department, who immediately scolds the freshman for breaking curfew and traumatizing his prized teary-eyed poultry. Desperate to avoid trouble, Shaolin frantically waves his hands and begs to explain his wild situation, recounting how he first found himself trapped inside the training room by those petty saboteurs, before managing to slip past his clueless rivals to find an alternative escape route, only to immediately run face first into a massive purple flame-spewing dragon waiting right outside. Song Junlang casually reassures him that the terrifying dragon won't actually attack, explaining with brutal honesty that our boy is simply too weak to be worth eating, leaving Shaolin completely dumbfounded that anyone could refer to a literal dragon as a mere lizard. Turning to the locked door, the logistics head explains this is just a classic setup by the discipline department, prompting our boy to realize he has been targeted by some incredibly petty saboteurs. This eccentric logistics head points out that redemption points are the absolute lifeblood of the academy, since students need them to buy gear, activate simulations, and secure rare resources, meaning those corrupt disciplinary officers love running entrapment schemes to extort desperate rookies. And since credits ultimately dictate who gets to graduate and enter the new world, they easily bully students into paying massive fines just to protect their academic records. Shaolin narrows his eyes, realizing Wang Dalin is the petty mastermind behind this setup. Smiling warmly, the eccentric logistics head leans in to deliver a rather chilling warning, pointing out that curfew violations and trespassing will cost our boy a massive chunk of points. But their conversation is suddenly cut short by a heavy thud echoing from the gate. Song Junlang casually asks if he should just open the gates and hand him over, prompting Shaolin to smirk, betting this eccentric senior didn't share all this info for nothing. And the logistics head grins, thoroughly impressed by the kid's sharp instincts and quick mind. Suddenly, the conversation takes a bizarre turn when the senior asks if he knows how to cook, leaving our boy completely dumbfounded as imaginary chef hats and spatulas spin around his head, since his entire culinary expertise consists of occasionally scrolling through cooking tutorials while eating snacks. Song Junlang offers to handle the disciplinary crowd outside in exchange for a tiny culinary favor, specifically demanding our boy turn his terrified screaming pet poultry into a delicious gourmet dinner, leaving Shaolin sweating bullets as he realizes he is expected to be the chef, since his only other option is walking outside to get extorted by the corrupt guards. Forced into a corner, our boy reluctantly agrees to cook the legendary dish. But the eccentric senior suddenly flashes a deeply unsettling, highly suspicious grin, making Shaolin frantically agree it is all voluntary while praying he survives this bizarre encounter. Pointing toward the nearby building, the logistics head tells him to hide inside and stay quiet, as our boy slips away to safety while his eccentric savior prepares to greet their guests. Right on cue, the corrupt disciplinary officers arrive, completely unaware of the trap they just walked into. Song Junlang greets the sophomore discipline star Chen Yu with a heavy dose of midnight sarcasm, but Chen Yu adjusts his glasses, claiming they are just investigating suspicious activity near the principal's pet, while the terrified black chicken sheds a literal tear over being called a useless distraction, prompting the logistics head to slyly ask if they actually found anything out here, before looking down on them, telling the sophomore to mind his own business first. A purple-haired lackey steps up, barking that they have total jurisdiction to hunt down curfew-breaking freshmen, only for Song Junlang's expression to instantly darken as he questions why a low-level grunt is speaking, threatening to report them directly to the principal for trespassing if they annoy him again, which absolutely infuriates Chen Yu, who accuses him of hiding behind the principal's authority, sneering that a weakling below C-class doesn't even deserve to be a department head. Hiding in the shadows, Xiaolin listens closely to the tense argument unfolding nearby, realizing that this arrogant sophomore Chen Yu holds a massive grudge against the logistics head, who is currently standing his ground in a bathrobe while holding a very confused chicken, leaving our boy sweating bullets as he wonders if a full-blown magical brawl is about to erupt. But instead of backing down, the eccentric senior just lets out a mocking scoff, pointing out that trying to bully someone with powerful connections is a remarkably brainless move, which prompts the angry lackey to scream about official academy rules and formal inspection rights, until a sudden holographic notification interrupts the heated argument with an urgent incoming call, forcing the stunned sophomore to immediately answer the high-ranking call from the student council president. This glowing blue hologram demands to know why they are wasting time harassing the logistics department. Chen Yu tries to argue with the president's hologram, claiming they are just looking for anomalies, while gritting his teeth in pure frustration over losing a golden opportunity to ruin his rival. Even his purple-haired lackey tries to protest, accusing the student council president of being incredibly biased. But the glowing hologram shuts them down instantly, revealing that the entire academy owes Song Junlang a massive favor, meaning nobody has the right to interfere with the eccentric logistics head's business under any circumstances. This absolute reality check leaves the corrupt sophomore seething with pure, unadulterated rage, forcing him to call off the search and order his confused squad to retreat immediately, though he can't resist throwing one last petty, dramatic warning over his shoulder, only for Song Junlang to flash a smug grin, happily returning the threat with absolute confidence. Stepping out from his hiding spot, Xiaolin apologizes, deeply curious about his savior's massive political leverage. Song Junlang laughs it off, throwing an arm around our boy's shoulder while explaining their rivalry, before eagerly dragging him off to finally get his hands on that legendary beggar's chicken, leaving Xiaolin to warn him that he absolutely cannot guarantee any authentic culinary masterpieces, but he still gets to work prepping the bird, wrapping it tightly in leaves and mud, carefully roasting it over an open fire while his eccentric savior watches with hungry anticipation. As they sit under the night sky, our boy enjoys a rare moment of peace, until a mouth-watering aroma suddenly fills the air 2 hours later, revealing a perfectly golden roast, prompting Xiaolin to wipe his brow, pleasantly surprised by his own beginner's luck, even starting to wonder if he secretly possesses some legendary hidden culinary genius. This logistics head eagerly inspects the steaming dish, thoroughly impressed by the rookie's unexpected cooking skills. Song Junlang tears off a perfectly roasted golden drumstick and hands it over, but our boy hesitates, asking why his eccentric savior isn't taking a bite first, who insists that the chef always deserves the very first taste of their masterpiece, prompting Xiaolin to happily sink his teeth into the juicy, tender meat, instantly melting from the rich, milky flavor of the best meal he has ever tasted, only for the senior to quickly clarify that he is asking about his physical state, leaving our boy completely bewildered as to why a simple chicken would affect his health, until a sudden, sharp shockwave of pure agony violently hits his system, sending him collapsing to the ground as his stomach feels like literal liquid fire, while his eccentric savior casually stands over him, taking notes on the agonizing side effects. Realizing he was just a guinea pig, our boy curses the smiling senior who clearly planned this entire trap, before his vision fades entirely, sending him face first onto the cold pavement in a pool of sweat. Suddenly, his consciousness drifts into a strange golden void where the agonizing heat only continues to intensify as glowing veins of raw energy violently pulse across his neck and face like molten gold, threatening to tear him apart from the inside out as a literal fire erupts from his chest. Yet amidst this pure torture, a bizarre surge of newfound power begins to weave through his soul. Meanwhile, the eccentric logistics head casually takes notes, revealing this was a highly experimental hybrid chicken, designed to boost physical stats once the poor rookie actually survives the agonizing rejection phase. By the time the bright morning sun finally rises over the academy grounds the next day, our boy is still out cold while stacks of research papers await his eventual awakening. Xiaolin finally wakes up in a comfortable bed, clutching his throbbing head in absolute agony, only to find Song Junlang standing over him with a plate of glowing, magical-looking fruit, making our boy sit up and furiously blast the senior for using him as a lab rat. But the eccentric logistics head casually waves it off, claiming he tested the recipe on himself first, before flashing a totally innocent smile and asking if the kid is feeling completely fine now, suggesting they check out his stats panel first instead of arguing over minor details, promising that the results of his painful culinary experiment will be a massive surprise. Narrowing his eyes in deep suspicion, our boy decides to summon his holographic interface, reluctantly agreeing to trust the eccentric senior as the blue screen flickers to life, revealing a set of incredibly underwhelming bottom-tier freshman stats that desperately need some work. Xiaolin gasps in absolute disbelief as he stares at the glowing screen, realizing his physical attack rating actually managed to climb from a pathetic F- to a solid F, which seems completely impossible given he only ate a single piece of roasted chicken. Even his basic physical training skills suddenly jumped up by 2 entire levels, prompting the eccentric logistics head to scribble down the successful results with manic glee, celebrating his highly illegal culinary experiment like a mad scientist who just conquered gravity. Demanding some actual answers, our boy steps out of bed to confront his eccentric host, who politely pulls out a chair and invites him to sit down for a chat, explaining that the bird was a custom custom hybrid bred from a magical beast from another world, before casually asking if the kid has ever read any classic portal fantasy novels. Song Junlang asks how long a primitive caveman would survive if suddenly dropped into a modern city. Xiaolin recalls a theory about how modern germs would instantly wipe out their primitive immune systems, leaving the poor ancient traveler to drop dead from a simple common cold. This eccentric senior nods, explaining that normal humans face the exact same biological rejection in the new world. This explains why freshmen are banned from entering until their stats meet the minimum safety threshold, prompting the mad scientist to share his brilliant idea of using magical food to speed up adaptation, though his first attempt involved eating raw beasts and nearly poisoning himself to death, which led him to develop the safer hybridized cooking method our boy just survived. Unfortunately, this magical food therapy builds an immediate resistance, meaning it only works once, but the eccentric senior eagerly points out he has plenty of other terrifying hybrid beasts to cook. Xiaolin glares at the senior, realizing he was just a glorified unpaid lab rat. But Song Junlang just offers a shameless chuckle, completely unbothered by the accusation, prompting our boy to set a strict ground rule about not dying during future taste tests, which seems totally reasonable until he learns he has been unconscious for 2 whole days. Panic immediately sets in as Xiaolin realizes his academic credits are about to tank, only for the logistics head to casually wave it off, revealing he already forged a perfect excuse, allowing our boy to finally let out a massive sigh of pure relief, before heading back to his normal life while his eccentric savior cheerfully demands dinner tonight. Meanwhile, a quiet girl with glasses peacefully enjoys her lunch in the crowded academy cafeteria, completely ignoring the loud, dramatic argument erupting between 2 stressed-out students right beside her table. Holding his chopsticks, the purple-haired lackey complains about getting absolutely chewed out over the freshman, while his angry leader slams the table, furious that our boy avoided punishment entirely. Listening closely, the quiet girl with glasses realizes she hasn't seen her classmate either. But her train of thought is interrupted when a tray is suddenly placed on her table, revealing Xiaolin himself, who casually waves with a smug, totally unbothered grin. Staring at him in disbelief, she demands to know where he has been hiding, which only makes our boy chuckle nervously, promising to explain the wild story later, until a loud, obnoxious voice cuts through the air as the angry rival spots him, marching right over to mockingly ask if the missing class monitor was finally expelled, sneering that no amount of training will ever help a weakling close the massive gap. Xiaolin casually scratches his ear, completely unfazed by the sophomore's loud, dramatic posturing. This dismissive attitude instantly sends the arrogant rival into an absolute vein-popping frenzy, who loudly declares that relying on powerful connections won't save a weakling in this academy, before storming off while promising to show our boy a real power gap during the upcoming exams. Watching them leave, Xiaolin sighs in on mild annoyance at the sheer absurdity of his school life, but his classmate quickly interrupts his thoughts to ask if he has seen the latest announcement, explaining that the schedule for their first comprehensive exam has suddenly been moved up. Our boy learns that their preparation time has been cut directly in half, leaving him completely stunned, since an earlier exam means he has barely any time left to raise his stats, forcing our boy to scramble to make up for his 2 days of missed classes. A tiny, angry substitute teacher named Li Meiling suddenly corners our boy in the hallway, accusing him of bullying Cheng Nana and forcing her into some ridiculously ambitious deal, which makes Xiaolin quickly raise his hands to explain it was all a fair test, but she instantly screams bullshit right in front of the entire meditating class, claiming he ignored Nana's good advice and even used the student president to pressure her. She warns him that he only got into this class because Nana personally requested it, leading the way while lecturing him about how arrogant rookies never appreciate true guidance, before revealing that Nana once mentored another stubborn student who insisted on dual classing, a talented kid who refused to listen to any warnings about splitting his focus, only to get brutally torn to shreds by alien monsters during his very first real mission. She explains that the poor kid's corpse was returned as a literal puddle of minced meat, leaving Nana to carry the crushing guilt of that horrific tragedy as a lifelong nightmare, which finally makes our boy realize why the senior was so aggressively overprotective from the start, as the tiny substitute teacher stands there trembling, waiting for his defensive excuses. But Xiaolin silently connects the dots, understanding Nana's opposition came from a place of genuine concern. Looking directly at the surprised instructor, he calmly tells her that he completely understands her warning, promising that he has absolutely no intention of letting history repeat itself on his watch, because everything he is doing right now is geared toward surviving the brutal new world. This tiny instructor scoffs at his confidence, warning him that she won't be offering any private makeup lessons, leaving our boy to casually walk away, ready to tackle his insane training schedule alone. Spotting him from across the room, his quiet classmate with glasses waves him over, as she generously hands over her detailed notes from the 2 days of classes he missed, saving our boy from falling hopelessly behind as he immediately dives into the study material, which explains that their magical world is fundamentally split into 4 core elemental forces, allowing skilled mages to program and combine these raw energies into devastating combat spells. To master this, he sits cross-legged to begin his very first elemental meditation session, but sweat quickly pours down his face as something feels completely off with his attempt, leaving him staring blankly in the dark after failing to sense a single speck of mana, until a glowing magical fruit is casually tossed into his hand by a familiar voice, prompting our boy to ask the eccentric logistics head if he has any cheat code food for perception. Song Junlang scoffs, asking if the kid thinks he is some magical cartoon cat with endless gadgets, explaining that while leveling up is easy, unlocking that very first spark of mana takes months. But Xiaolin refuses to wait, knowing the upcoming exam leaves him with absolutely zero time, prompting the senior to suggest consulting classmates, since elemental perception is directly tied to intelligence. Musing over the word, our boy realizes he needs to find the smartest student in his class. Remembering that his position as acting class monitor grants him the authority to view everyone's basic stats, and with a quick swipe of his finger, he pulls up the records to find his target, only to freeze in absolute shock as a bizarre, highly alarming detail catches his eye, revealing that the brilliant Bu Xiaoyu has an incredibly tragic lifespan of only 2 years remaining. Heavy footsteps echo through the corridor as our boy walks away, completely consumed by this dark revelation. Xiaolin slams the door open, determined to confront his brilliant classmate face to face, only to find Gu Xiaoyu peacefully meditating on a cushion while offering a polite greeting, prompting our boy to sit down opposite her, leaving the smart girl completely bewildered as he explains his special authority as acting monitor to view everyone's private profiles, before bluntly revealing he saw her natural lifespan has a mere 2 years remaining. This sudden, heavy revelation leaves the quiet genius staring back in absolute stunned silence, but she quickly recovers her composure, calmly confirming the terrifying truth without a single tear, casually asking why he decided to bring up her impending doom so suddenly. Leaning forward in deep concern, our boy asks if she suffers from some terminal illness, reminding her they survived life and death together, promising to help her find a cure. Gu Xiaoyu stares back in mild surprise, her usual stoic expression cracking for just a split second, before calmly explaining that her condition isn't some sudden illness, but a trait she was born with, leaving Xiaolin completely stunned as he tries to process this bizarre biological curse, suddenly realizing why she was so incredibly desperate to find a way to extend her life at this academy, since failing the exams and getting sent back to Earth with wiped memories would seal her tragic fate, prompting the quiet genius to offer a rare, genuine smile while thanking him for saving her life, which makes our boy blush slightly as he casually brushes it off as a mutually beneficial deal, warmly promising to back her up whenever she needs help, officially cementing their genuine friendship. Meanwhile, the tiny substitute teacher kicks the classroom doors wide open while loudly complaining about her lousy job, only to freeze as she spots our boy sitting right next to the class genius in the back. This tiny instructor offers a rare bit of praise for their punctual arrival, but she immediately pivots to yelling at our boy for failing his basic meditation, leaving Xiaolin to nod along while silently roasting her incredibly explosive temper. Around them, the rest of the class sits in deep, silent meditation, prompting our boy to close his eyes and try sensing the elements once more, only to hit the exact same brick wall of absolute sensory nothingness. Realizing standard training won't cut it, he decides to play his final card, activating his unique copying skill to scan the entire room for a shortcut. A wave of magical energy sweeps across his classmates to analyze their progress, revealing that almost everyone is struggling at level 0 except for one copyable target. Xiaolin locks his gaze onto his target, ready to pull off a shameless heist. Finding that Gu Xiaoyu is already rocking a level 6 basic meditation skill like an absolute boss, which our boy immediately copies, giving him a temporary 3-minute cheat code to enlightenment. Suddenly, the entire world shifts as he finally fully perceives the colorful elemental forces swirling around him, knowing he must memorize this exact feeling before his stolen timer runs out completely. Meanwhile, the tiny instructor yawns at her desk, desperately wishing she could ditch this boring class, convinced that none of these rookies stand a chance at unlocking elemental perception anytime soon, until a sudden spike of magical energy makes her head snap up in pure disbelief, as the raw power of the elements begins aggressively rushing towards Xiaolin on its own initiative, leaving the shocked teacher wondering how a kid with bottom-tier intelligence is pulling off a literal miracle. A sharp chime echoes in his mind as the elemental energy finally settles around him, confirming that his shameless copying trick actually unlocked the basic meditation skill permanently. But his celebration is cut short when the tiny substitute teacher suddenly looms over him, demanding to know what kind of underhanded tricks he used to cause such a massive commotion. Before he can even formulate a lie, she aggressively grabs his wrist, dragging our boy straight out of the classroom while his classmates watch in absolute silence, pulling up his private student profile to check his skills with the academy's system. Her jaw drops in pure disbelief upon seeing his newly unlocked level 1 meditation skill, prompting her to fiercely demand an immediate confession about how he pulled off this miracle. leaving our boy to weakly claim he just had a sudden, highly convenient stroke of genius. Xiaolin quickly spins a story about studying Zhu Xiaoyu's notes and eating weird food at Song's place, suggesting that one of those exotic fruits must have given him a lucky, temporary perception boost. Hearing the name of that infamous madman instantly makes the tiny instructor buy his ridiculous excuse, warning our boy that acting as a guinea pig for crazy research is a great way to die. Seizing the moment, he casually asks when they will finally start learning actual combat spells, only for the pint-sized teacher to instantly chop him right across the forehead in sheer annoyance, reminding him that his pathetic intelligence stat of 2 makes casting spells a literal pipe dream, crushing his magical dreams by calling his first-year ambitions nothing but pure, delusional, wishful thinking. Our boy silently laments his low stats, realizing his stolen copy skill is on a massive 7-day cooldown, leaving him to wonder if he must abandon magic entirely and focus solely on physical combat. Meanwhile, the pink-haired senior realizes our boy is only dual-classing to survive the brutal academy exams, which makes her soften up just as Xiaolin lets out an awkward, loud cough, prompting the tiny instructor to claim she is only helping him out of sheer saintly generosity. She asks if he remembers seeing other students using magical staves during the entrance exam, reminding him of the time he successfully fired a magic bomb without knowing a single spell, explaining that while a staff isn't strictly required, it massively boosts a rookie's pathetic elemental control. Turns out those starter weapons come preloaded with basic spells that anyone with non-zero intelligence can trigger, so she tells him to head over to the Academy's trading area to buy one. Thrilled by this massive loophole, our boy pumps his fist and profusely thanks his pint-sized mentor, but she instantly bonks him with her staff, warning him not to get scammed by exploding knockoffs. She also warns him to stay far away from flashy, high-tier staves with his pathetic intelligence, prompting our boy to politely thank his senior as they finally go their separate ways. But the tiny instructor suddenly halts her footsteps right before reaching the exit, turning back to deliver a surprisingly soft-hearted reminder that staying alive is always the top priority, which makes Xiaolin realize his fierce, loudmouth mentor is actually a deeply caring ally at heart. Heading straight to the Academy's trading area, he counts his total budget of 800 exchange points, knowing he must reserve 500 points just to unlock the high-stakes holographic simulation field, leaving him with a tight 300-point budget to customize 2 budget-friendly novice weapons, resulting in a basic novice staff and a wind-infused short sword tailored for his dual-class build. With his gear, skills, and mindset fully prepared, our boy stands ready to face his next trial. Standing tall in his sleek new combat gear, Xiaolin confidently declares that it is finally time. A blue holographic prompt pops up, asking him to confirm the high-stakes E-rank simulation field, which he immediately accepts by tapping the glowing button without a single second of hesitation. Digital particles swirl around our boy as the system registers his daring freshman request, instantly warping him into a brutal volcanic landscape overflowing with molten lava and jagged rocks. Stealing his resolve, the kid prepares himself as the system issues a final warning to get ready, revealing his dual objectives to either reach the cave's deepest point or survive a 2-hour monster siege. Right on cue, terrifying mutated lava rats with glowing red eyes begin snarling from the shadows. Unsheathing his wind-infused shortsword, Xiaolin calmly notes that he chose this E-rank difficulty for a reason, as the pack of ravenous beasts suddenly charges forward to tear him to shreds. Raising his wind-infused shortsword, Xiaolin prepares to test his brand-new weapon on the incoming horde, and with a swift swing, he unleashes a wind blade that slices right through a rat's armor, sending green elemental slashes tearing through the pack and turning them into digital dust. Knowing that constantly leveling up and surviving these brutal trials is his only ticket to staying alive, he pivots smoothly to strike down another pair of beasts trying to ambush him from behind, leaving the defeated monsters to dissolve into glowing blue particles on the cavern floor. Our boy smiles, realizing his new armor-piercing weapon is way more efficient than his old starter gear. But his brief moment of satisfaction is interrupted by a massive fiery roar echoing through the cave, revealing a giant stone-armored rat leader that looks ready to turn him into a light snack. Instead of panicking, Xiaolin just smirks and readies his glowing blade for a real challenge. Deciding to switch things up, Xiaolin pulls out his novice staff to test its magical capabilities, right as the massive armored rat leader charges forward with a deafening, furious roar. Our boy stands his ground, channeling his mana to summon a sharp shard of ice, unleashing a swift ice bolt that strikes the beast directly to trigger a handy freeze effect. This massive rodent instantly freezes solid, completely locked in place by the sudden frostbite. Capitalizing on the opening, he immediately swaps back to his wind-infused short sword with a smug grin, delivering a devastating slash that shatters the frozen monster into a million tiny pieces. Silence returns to the volcanic cavern as the last of the digital particles fade away, leaving our boy highly satisfied with his brilliant dual-wielding strategy of crowd control and armor piercing. As he pulls up his status screen to check his rewards for this flawless victory, this system screen flashes with a sweet haul of experience points across all his active masteries, making him realize that actual combat is light years faster than sweating it out on a treadmill. And since he still has plenty of time left on his survival clock, our boy decides to take a quick breather before exploring deeper into the volcanic cavern. Suddenly, a barrage of loud loud system pings, breaks the silence, and catches him completely off guard, prompting him to pull up his interface to see what the massive commotion is about, only to find a highly toxic public forum post targeting him by name. This thread is packed with jealous students calling him a talentless hack who doesn't deserve his position, which immediately points to his petty rival, Wang Dalin, who is clearly desperate for attention. But before he can even get mad, the entire thread suddenly vanishes into thin air. Shaolin stares in confusion at a system notification announcing his rival's swift 7-day ban, followed by a direct, no-nonsense message from Cheng Na telling him to focus on getting stronger, which makes our boy smile as he realizes his fierce senior is quietly looking out for him. Agreeing with her advice, the kid decides to stop wasting time on petty forum drama, gripping his wind-infused short sword with renewed focus as he prepares to venture deeper into the cave. He walks down the quiet, crystal-lined cavern path while keeping a sharp eye out for danger, noting that these simulated dungeons are perfect, one-to-one recreations of the actual dangerous new world. But he wonders why the Academy still hosts lethal exams if safe simulations exist. Suddenly, the absolute silence of the cavern triggers his survival instincts, making him halt his steps. Right before a massive fiery explosion suddenly erupts from the ground directly beneath him, he barely leaps back in time as a massive fiery blast erupts right where he stood, coughing through the thick smoke while trying to lock his eyes on the incoming threat, only to spot a massive axe-wielding silhouette slowly emerging from the burning ruins of the cavern. This system identifies this beast as a Black Iron rank lava berserker from the native troll race, reminding our boy of how the Academy ranks every living being based on their total strength, starting with the ordinary rank for weaklings like him who have under 100 total stats, followed by the Black Iron rank which serves as the bare minimum to enter the new world, before scaling up to the silver rank where legendary beasts and elite warriors reside, followed by the godlike gold rank that represents the absolute pinnacle of mortal power, and finally the mythical dark gold rank, which is basically reserved for world-ending disasters. And at the absolute peak sits the legendary rank, representing power beyond comprehension, which makes this Black Iron rank troll a walking nightmare with over 100 total attributes, especially since our boy Shaolin is currently sitting at a pathetic 13 points, meaning a direct clash with this beast is basically a death sentence, as the monster swings its massive axe, instantly blowing him back with sheer force, proving that this unnerfed boss is on a completely different dimension of strength, leaving our boy to desperately wonder if he can even scratch this absolute unit, just as another devastating overhead strike threatens to turn him into hot paste, forcing him to leap backward as the ground erupts in a fiery explosion. Knowing he can forfeit the trial at the cost of 500 precious points, tightening his grip, our boy realizes that relying on a forfeit button won't save him in reality. He decides to test his absolute limits and see how long he can survive against this monster, as the massive troll swings its fiery axe down, forcing him to duck beneath the blazing arc. Sweat drips down his face, but his eyes remain locked on the beast's next move. Slipping past the giant's blind spot, Shaolin positions himself perfectly for a swift counterattack, unleashing a sharp wind slash that strikes the monster directly across its broad back, only to watch his elemental blade bounce off the troll's thick skin without leaving a scratch. This furious beast immediately retaliates with another devastating swing, sending a wave of fire crashing down. But our boy quickly notices a critical flaw in the giant's slow, sluggish turning speed, allowing him to slide beneath the massive cross slash as he prepares to exploit this weakness. Locking his eyes on the giant, our boy spots the perfect angle to strike, realizing the beast's chest glows bright red right before it unleashes an attack, which creates a brief critical opening as the monster raises its massive arm. Seizing the moment, the kid pulls out his novice staff to channel another spell, firing a high-speed ice bullet that slams directly into the troll's glowing core, instantly swapping back to his wind-infused short sword as he lunges forward for the kill, driving his blade straight through the weakened icy armor with a satisfying crunch, shattering the monster's core and dealing a massive chunk of critical damage. Unfortunately, this legendary stunt only shaves off a measly 25% of its health, leaving our boy staring up at a very angry, very red fist ready to flatten him. This giant's glowing red fist slams directly into our boy's face with bone-shattering force, sending him crashing violently into the rocky ground as a massive shockwave erupts. Struggling to stand, the kid realizes his left arm is broken and his ribs are severely damaged, but he refuses to back down, activating his unique scholar skill to turn the tables. This system immediately detects the troll's active berserk skill, which boosts attack power while lowering defense, prompting our boy to instantly copy the ability and shroud himself in a crimson aura, knowing that 60 seconds of pure unadulterated rage is more than enough to finish this. Charging forward with insane speed, he unleashes a devastating first strike against the massive beast, slicing right through its weakened defense to shave off another 42% of its health. Our boy smirks, fully embracing the high-stakes gamble of boosted attack power and paper-thin defense. Shaolin tightens his grip on his blade as the massive troll roars in sheer fury, unleashing a swift, wind-infused slash that cuts straight through the monster's weakened defenses, shaving off another massive chunk of its health bar in a single decisive strike. Knowing that targeting a giant's joints is basic gaming common sense, our boy moves in, landing a brutal second strike that leaves the beast's health bar rapidly bleeding out. But with only 18 seconds left on his borrowed berserk timer, he must act fast. As the furious troll lets out a deafening roar, preparing for one final desperate counterattack. This monster raises its massive, fiery axe to crush him into a million pieces, but our boy easily slips past the blazing arc to prepare his absolute final strike, driving his wind-infused blade straight through the beast's glowing core to end the fight. With its core completely shattered, the massive troll dissolves into a shower of glowing digital particles. And as the adrenaline fades, a system notification confirms his berserk mode has officially deactivated, hitting him with a massive 40% attribute penalty that will last for 10 agonizing minutes. He collapses flat on his back, feeling like his entire body is made of heavy lead. But a triumphant smile spreads across his face because he actually took down a black iron beast. Suddenly, a loud system chime rings out as his glowing blue eye reflects a new notification, announcing that his soul strength has met the threshold to upgrade his unique top student talent, prompting him to sit up and inspect the newly updated holographic interface floating before him, only to realize his SS rank talent has officially reached level 2, blowing his mind completely. Turns out his passive learning speed is up to 120%, with double the skill replication charges. He notes that the upgraded talent should analyze enemy skills with much higher precision, but he decides to table the theory crafting and focus on clearing the dungeon first, walking up to the glowing stone pillar that marks the end of this volcanic trial. As soon as our boy places his hand on the warm, cracked stone, a massive system notification confirms his successful completion of the blazing lava cave. From that day on, the kid practically lives inside these simulated battlefields twice a week, braving freezing snowfields and scorching deserts packed with massive venomous scorpions before testing his magical prowess against giant venomous serpents in the deep jungle and even sneaking past terrifying green-skinned swamp monsters in the most extreme environments. This grueling routine leaves him completely exhausted, but his rapid growth is undeniable. Despite clearing countless dungeons and copying skills, Shaolin notices his talent hasn't upgraded again, deciding to toss his empty water bottle and stop overthinking the mystery for now, as he heads off to find an expert who can actually explain how soul strength works. Arriving at a high-tech laboratory, filled with bubbling test tubes and microscopes, this resident researcher questions why a mere freshman is suddenly asking about advanced sophomore-level theory, before explaining that soul strength is simply the innate, unchangeable baseline of a person's spirit, which has absolutely nothing to do with genes, bloodlines, or how many stats you stack, meaning it is physically impossible for anyone to ever alter their soul's baseline power. This absolute rule leaves our boy deeply confused about how his own system bypassed those limits. But his thoughts are cut short when the eccentric scientist proudly unveils his latest successful experiment. Shaolin recoils in absolute horror as a fiery, demonic-looking chicken head pops up before him, with the eccentric scientist cheerfully explaining that this bizarre test subject must be eaten completely raw, presenting a plate of pixelated, pulsating raw meat that looks like a health hazard, which instantly sends a shiver of pure disgust down our boy's spine as he backs away. But remembering how much his senior usually helps him, the kid reluctantly picks up his chopsticks, bracing himself for the absolute worst as he downs the mysterious raw meat in one gulp, only to instantly freeze as his face turns pale from the sheer unholy taste, sending him sprinting straight to the nearest trash can to violently throw up a literal rainbow. Clutching his stomach in agony, the kid groans about the absolutely vile texture of his meal. And 3 hours later, he lies completely defeated while the relentless scientist eagerly demands his data. A blue system notification pops up, confirming he just unlocked a brand new level 1 fire-resistant skill, which leaves the eccentric scientist absolutely ecstatic since elemental resistance is incredibly rare for a freshman, though Shaolin grumbles that he would gladly eat alien meat if it actually boosted his soul strength. Changing the subject, the researcher asks if he is ready for the upcoming Sunset Valley reconnaissance exam, an exam our boy confirms is scheduled to start bright and early the day after tomorrow, prompting the scientist to warn him that dying in a real assessment costs 10 years of lifespan, reminding the kid that surviving the test is far more important than chasing high scores. Soon, the gloomy atmosphere inside the Class 7 classroom is practically thick enough to cut with a knife, as their class leader barks at everyone for looking so pathetic before the big day even begins, while a muscular classmate confidently promises to carry the entire group on his back through sheer brute force. This meathead boasts about his level 2 skills, promising to carry the entire class to easy victory. But the stern class leader instantly shuts down the chatter with a cold, commanding glare, dropping a massive bombshell by appointing Shaolin as the official commander-in-chief for the upcoming test. Whispers immediately erupt across the room about our boy's notoriously bottom-tier stats, making him completely unreliable, prompting the muscular classmate to slam his fist down in absolute loudmouth defiance. He loudly rants about how the kid barely survived the entrance exam by riding coattails. Unfazed, the class leader explains that official academy regulations automatically grant the acting monitor command duties, though secretly, the leader keeps his eyes locked on the kid while harboring deeper thoughts. Pulling up a private status screen that reveals Shaolin's attributes have quietly shifted, realizing with sheer shock that our boy somehow managed to triple his baseline strength in record time. Standing at the podium, the instructor barks a final warning as the countdown clock ticks down. This arrogant meathead classmate tenses up, suddenly realizing this is no longer a game. Meanwhile, Shaolin remains completely calm, mentally preparing for whatever trial awaits them. As the clock strikes 8, a blinding blue light envelops the entire classroom, instantly transporting the students to the harsh, windswept canyons of Sunset Valley. Several classmates tumble face first out of the glowing portal, landing hard on the rocky ground. Coughing through the dust, the students immediately complain about the brutal, howling winds. Unfazed by the storm, our boy adjusts his cloak while scanning the desolate landscape. Suddenly, a massive system screen appears, detailing their main objective of escaping an enemy army, which offers high-risk optional missions alongside a grim reminder about losing 10 years of lifespan. Checking her notebook, the smart glasses girl notes they have successfully arrived at the valley entrance, explaining that a vital supply station lies just 3 kilometers ahead on their map, which prompts Xiaolin to point out that only 30% of them need to survive to pass. But this logical math instantly triggers the loudmouth meathead, who accuses our boy of using them as bait. This aggressive troublemaker rants to the crowd, trying his absolute best to spark a full-blown mutiny, leaving the anxious classmates whispering in fear about losing 10 years of their precious lifespans. Pointing an angry finger, the meathead barks that a slacker like Shaolin cannot possibly be trusted, and despite a classmate trying to defend our boy, the hothead demands they split into 2 separate teams, sending a wave of sheer confusion and panic through the rest of the undecided students. Unfazed by the drama, Shaolin calmly steps forward, refusing to force anyone to follow his lead. Since they cannot agree, Shaolin calmly suggests splitting into 2 separate teams to tackle the missions. This hot-headed meathead immediately accepts the offer, practically vibrating with sheer unearned confidence, loudly rallying any gullible classmates to join his squad with promises of a guaranteed safe victory. Meanwhile, a classmate with spiral glasses points out that the 2 objectives are completely mutually exclusive, prompting several greedy students to chase the high-reward reconnaissance route despite the obvious massive risks. But the smart glasses girl objects, reminding everyone they only have a single day of rations, which the meathead scoffs at, claiming they can easily steal supplies from the enemy camp like geniuses. Realizing a total split is inevitable, a blue-haired classmate suggests setting a mutual meeting point, allowing both factions to regroup and tackle the final escape together if things go horribly wrong. Shaolin agrees to the compromise, designating their current location as the final rendezvous point in 3 days. Wang Dalin sneers in disgust, calling everyone else cowards as he prepares to leave. He rallies 39 greedy classmates to follow him straight into the high-risk enemy camp, leaving Shaolin with a much smaller squad of 21 sensible but anxious students, who immediately suggest ditching the other group entirely to secure their own easy survival, prompting the smart glasses girl to ask if they are truly playing it this safe. But our boy just flashes a highly confident, slightly devious smirk in response, explaining to his remaining crew that the loudmouths have their strategy completely backward, declaring that while keeping everyone alive is their absolute top priority right now, they are still going to sweep up every single reward this dungeon has to offer.